welcome to Aki News episode of the day, where we tell it as it is, unfiltered and uncensored. Today, I do have the privilege to have one of my personal heroes and the front line fighter for our freedom and liberty, Clare Lopez. She's the founder of Lopez Liberty LLC. Hi, Clare. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Annie. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very glad to be with you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So me and you today, we are going to talk Iran, or to be specific, Islamic Republic of Iran's regime. Let us start by the newest addition to this monstrous regime. Ebrahim Raisi is now officially the new president of Iran. I don't know what they call it translated to English, but let's go with his inauguration was completed and he's in power. Tell our audience, what does that mean for every single one of us across the planet Earth?
Well, I think the first thing to realize is who Ebrahim Raisi actually is. He came up through the ranks of the revolution of the Iranian, revolutionary regime in the judiciary. He was not a cleric. But he came up the judiciary, and his last post before he was selected to become the next president, selected, that is, by the Iranian Supreme Leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Before that, his last position was the chief of the Iranian judiciary system. He is often called the Butcher of Tehran. And the reason for that goes all the way back to at least 1988, when Raisi was a member of what's been called the Death Commission. This was a commission put together to basically condemn to execution tens and tens of thousands of Iranian prisoners held at that time in Iranian jails. Many of them, perhaps most of them, belong to the Mujahideen-e-Khalq, the democratic opposition group to the Iranian regime. And a whole lot of those prisoners who were condemned to execution by Raisi and the other members of the commission were very young. I mean, just teenagers, as young as 13, 14 years old. And the girls very often were raped before they were executed in the twisted belief that this would prevent them from going to paradise. So from that point onwards in 1988, on through the years, Raisi only added to his reputation as a butcher of the Iranian people. He's now been inaugurated, as you say, as president of Iran, following what only can be called selections back in June this year, 2021, when, by the way, a huge number of the Iranian electorate boycotted the elections. They knew they were a farce, a fraud, and they simply did not even go to the polls. But nevertheless, he was inaugurated. And even before that, in the interim period, let's say between June and now, which is early August of 2021, we can see, and this gets to the second part of your question, Annie, we can see the implications for the United States, for the rest of the world, in the ramping up of the Iranian regime's aggression and belligerence. Just one example of that, and maybe the most visible, are the renewed attacks on shipping, international commercial shipping in the area of, let's say, the Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, Gulf of Oman. And in the last couple of weeks only, multiple ships have been attacked. There was a drone strike against a ship called the Mercer Street just a couple weeks ago that killed 2 crew members. One was the captain and another crew member. Killed 2 people. That's an act of war. And then more recently, within just the past few days, another ship I think it's called the Asphalt Princess, if I've got the name right, was also attacked in that same area of the Gulf of Oman. Some crews were successful in fending off actual armed boarding parties, which were Iranian, at least proxies, if not nationals, and fended them off, preventing the taking of their ships hostage or the hijacking of their ships. This is piracy. This is piracy on the high seas. So that's just one example. And I know we're going to get into talking about the Iranian nuclear weapons program, but that would be another example of just absolute disregard for any international agreements that Iran is a party to, and a violation of so many of the provisions of the nuclear deal, the JCPOA, or Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action from July of 2015. I know we'll get into all of that, but I guess the theme of what I'm saying is that with the elevation of Raisi, who is a protege, a favored protege of the Supreme Leader Khamenei, elevation to the presidency, there is now a partnership at the very top of the Iranian regime, the Supreme Leader and the president, in lockstep, really, on an aggressive path forward for the Islamic Republic of Iran, in ways that really should sound the alarm to all of the rest of the world, the United States included.
Absolutely. You brought something up. If you don't mind, I'm going to add something to it. You mentioned how back in the time, Raisi was responsible for killing a lot of innocent young teenagers, and girls would be raped before being executed so they wouldn't go to heaven or paradise. I just want to add this. Ayatollah Khamenei, the original supreme leader of Iran, after he hijacked the country, came up with that fatwa that any virgin girl or woman who is going to be executed should be raped the night before. And how they worked is a judge, a police officer, a prison guard, they would marry them temporarily for a couple of hours, rape them, make sure they're not a virgin, hang them in the morning, then go to their parents' home, knock at the door, give them a penny or two and say, this was your daughter's temporary marriage money. To this day, that law still applies, and they're still doing it, just for anybody who thinks this was something back in the time. Now, this is still happening. If you're arrested and sentenced to death as a virgin woman or girl, remember, at age 9, you're considered a woman. So we're always talking about 9 and up. They will temporarily marry you, just like Mohammed did, and rape you. Now, that's just my habit of making sure to expand that this is not 1400 years ago. But you mentioned, before we go to the international danger and aggression by the regime of Iran, you just published an article on Front Page Mag that is about the uprising and brave people of Iran and Cuba, I believe. And I love the title. I love it. You are directly asking Biden if he hears the screams for freedom. In that article, you mentioned a response by our government. And I'm going to actually put it on a screen because sometimes I feel like people need to read it to believe it. So U.S. Department of State on July responded with a press release that says the Iranian people have the right to voice their frustration and hold their government accountable. But we have seen disturbing reports that security forces fired on protesters, and it goes on to basically just urge the Iranian government to allow its citizens to exercise the right to freedom of expression and to freely access information, including via the internet. I hear 2 questions for you, Claire, here. Number 1, they are urging the Iranian government or regime, as me and you call them, to be nice and let people practice, freedom of speech and freedom of expression, but they're not doing anything tangibly to boycott the regime or sanction, possibly putting on the regime. Nothing. They're just verbally asking them.
Yeah, I would say first, I think that press release from the Department of State really illustrates a profound failure on the part of the Biden administration to understand what the Iranian regime really is. They don't, for starters, understand what its name means, the Islamic Republic of Iran. I even have to wonder how many of them have read the Iranian Constitution, which is online in English, easily available. But if they had
I'm so sorry, I really have to say this here. Claire, how many of them do you think have read the American Constitution?
Well, there you go. And yeah, even more to the point. But when you're, looking at the Iranian regime and trying to formulate policy towards that regime, responding to its belligerence, responding to its aggression in the region and elsewhere, I think it would behoove them to take a look at the Iranian Constitution, which, by the way, that regime actually does follow. And what it says in the very beginning is that it is an Islamic regime formed for the purpose of spreading the revolution by jihad to the entire world and to establish a universal, a global Islamic state under rule of Islamic law, Sharia. That's what it says in the Constitution. And then a little bit further down, but still in the preamble part, there's a section about the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And the header of that section says an ideological army. And what it says in that section is that the IRGC, and that would include its subdivision of the Quds Force, the kind of overseas militia of the regime of the IRGC. It says that the IRGC is an ideological army whose purpose is not just to defend the borders of the Iranian nation state, but to spread the revolution by jihad to the entire world. It doesn't mince words. It's not ambiguous. And then, just in case folks did not get the full import of that section, there's a quote from the Quran. It's from Quran verse 860. And it says, and this is quoted in the Iranian Constitution, it says, "Make ready your forces to the utmost of your ability, including steeds of war, to strike terror into the hearts of the enemy." What is ambiguous about that? So if they had read and understood that part, or just those parts of the Iranian Constitution, they would not have any doubt about what the objectives are. Since the revolution of 1979 straight through to the current day. I'm at a loss for how to reach those who cannot read the most simple English language version of the Iranian Constitution. But there is the danger. That's the danger right spelled out there for the rest of the world. It explains why they have overseas militia proxies in places like Lebanon with Hezbollah, in Gaza with Hamas, in Yemen with the Houthis, the Hashd-e-Shabi Shiite terror militias in Iraq that are attacking our forces, American and coalition forces there. It explains why those militias exist. And it explains why there is now this surge in aggressive behavior that we talked about with regard to the shipping. And it also explains why this regime is so absolutely directly bent on acquiring a deliverable nuclear weapons capability. It is all of a piece and of a pattern. They are consistent. They are consistent in their objectives, in alignment with their constitution. Unfortunately, perhaps more so than some of us sometimes here with our own constitution, as you mentioned.
Very true. But since let's go there. Let's talk about Iran nuclear deal. You have mentioned this many times, and I have tried to tell people, we all know Iran nuclear program has been going. I think the last time I saw a video of you, you said never skipped a beat. Since late 80s, it didn't even start with Khamenei, it started with Khomeini, all that, we know, we are aware. But we also are, at least me and you, are aware that the billions of dollars that Obama administration handed over, I think it was in 2015 when they made the deal, it definitely fast-tracked the Iran nuclear program. Now, on that note, you sent me an article that it mentions that Iran will reach nuclear weapon within 10 weeks. What is that all about?
What we're looking at there in that Jerusalem Post article of just a few days ago refers to a statement made by the Israeli Defense Minister, Benny Gantz, who said that Iran is just 10 weeks from a breakout capability. And when he says breakout capability, what he means is has enough highly enriched uranium on hand to make at least one nuclear weapon. Now, that is a very conservative and I think rather belated assessment. But we can look, for example, at recent reporting out of the IAEA, that's the International Atomic Energy Agency, the watchdog organization, if you will, of the United Nations for nuclear programs around the world. And the IAEA came out at the end of May 31st with one of its regular update reports on the Iranian nuclear weapons program. And I have to say, I've watched the IAEA become more and more candid, I guess I'd say, with its reporting about the Iranian nuclear weapons program in recent quarters, because these reports come out quarterly or thereabouts. And I would go back, first of all the way back to November of 2011, when one of the quarterly reports of the IAEA, regular quarterly reports of the Governor's Board about the Iranian nuclear weapons program, issued what I think is one of the most candid and probably the baseline report about the Iranian nuclear weapons program. Again, I said November 2011. And in that report, the IAEA listed a whole bunch of areas that at that time, that's 10 years ago, the Iranian regime was known to be working on, known by the IAEA to be working on with regard to nuclear weapons. And it included, things like the formation of the nuclear hemispheres, the pit, if you will. It included things like developing the explosive devices for the multi-point implosion sequence that sets off the nuclear explosion of a nuclear bomb. A lot of detail about the Iranian nuclear weapons program. Fast forward now to today, and what I'm seeing the IAEA becoming more and more alarmed about what it is seeing the Iranians do. And that has to do with reports, for example, of more and more highly enriched stocks of uranium. The regime has openly admitted, and the IAEA confirms, that they're enriching up to the 60% mark, which, by the way, is sufficient for a nuclear device, although above 90% is optimum for a nuclear weapon. But who knows what they're doing in the clandestine sites? As you mentioned, Annie, the Iranians have had a clandestine nuclear weapons program since before the death of the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini back in the late 1980s, when in the wake of the disastrous Iran-Iraq war, he essentially told his IRGC, get the bomb, because they never wanted to be in a position of weakness again, in which, you know, the Iranian nation state would be at risk. I mean, at existential risk. So clandestine program ever since then. This is what the IAEA knows about openly that we're talking about here. So enrichment at least to 60%. The amassing of stockpiles of enriched uranium way beyond any limits imposed by the 2015 JCPOA. The linking up of more and more cascades of highly advanced, faster, better centrifuges. They're on up to at least what they call IR6 or more, that being 6th generation of centrifuges. They're installing new centrifuges in a brand new underground centrifuge hall at Natanz that is under construction right now, apparently. Now, with the new president, Raisi in lockstep, ideological partner with the Supreme Leader Khamenei, I think we're really in trouble.
And let's just quickly add that in 1979, when Ruhollah Khomeini arrived in Iran, right off the airplane, he was driven into the big famous cemetery in Tehran. They put a chair for him. He sat there, and the first thing he said in Farsi was, "And let the plan begin. We will wipe Israel off the map and take down the great Satan, aka America." Now you put everything Claire said, plus the very beginning in the opening of the story. Yes, we are in trouble. But here's a question for you, Claire. I know you get this question a lot, especially from me. We know what's happening. They are telling us what's happening. They told us 43 years ago. They're repeatedly telling us. As you said, it is written in their own constitution. Why is nobody listening?
Well, you know, as I said, I do think the level of alarm on the part of international parties, among them European parties, the JCPOA, the IAEA, the EU, and maybe even here in the United States, that level of alarm, I think, is rising. But I think fundamentally, Westerners in particular have a very difficult time understanding the mentality of an ideologically, Islamically driven mentality of this Iranian regime. That is, we Westerners, it seems to me they persist in a mistaken assessment of that regime in Tehran as somehow similar or like other governments around the world, that they're reasonable, they're rational, that they would put the survival of the people of the nation above all other values, and that they would deal rationally, that they would negotiate rationally and also sincerely with other parties. And it doesn't seem possible to disabuse them of that mistaken impression. I don't know why, really. But they are stuck in a Western mentality, a Western way of looking at that regime in Tehran that is profoundly, in my opinion, mistaken. And because of their failure to understand it, we continuously underestimate the commitment, the ideological drive, the fealty to Islam that lies behind this regime's actions and behavior. And what it means is that the survival and the well-being of the people of Iran, even of the nation state of Iran, may not actually be the highest value of that regime. And that is a hard thing for Westerners to comprehend, for which that value is our highest value, the protection of the people, the defense of the nation state. Of course, we say those are the highest values of our leadership and of our governments and our people. But no, remember what Khamenei, first Supreme Leader, said so long ago, something to the effect of, in the context of a conflict with the West, he said something to the effect of, let this land burn. I say, let this land go up in flames if it means that Islam triumphs in the world. Now that might be a slight paraphrase, but pretty much that's what he said. That's what Westerners just simply for some reason do not comprehend.
Yeah, and for anybody who might say, again, this was 40 some years ago and Khomeini is dead, very recently, as a few weeks ago, Islamic Republic of Iran's Secretary of Defense publicly said to those who are protesting in the streets of Iran, said, if comes the time of you pushing us out of this land, we will leave while burning it down. Same people, same mentality, same goal. Again, yes, Islam coming from there, I can guarantee you, nothing matters. Again, current Supreme Leader Khamenei, about 5 years ago, gave a Friday prayer and said to America, I have 71 million hostages in this country. I dare you to come for us. He was referring to citizens of Iran, right?
The people of Iran itself, yeah. And the people, I mean, I'm sure you agree with this, Annie, and maybe many of our viewers do too. The people of Iran are not part of this. They're not on board with this at all, especially that go up in flames part. But rather, and recently, really going on for quite some time, more than recently, they're in the streets. They're in the streets by the thousands and thousands in major cities across the country, Tabriz, Isfahan, Mashhad, and even the capital Tehran itself, many others. And of course, in the Arab-populated southwestern province of Khuzestan, where the latest round of protests really kicked off some months ago over the horrific water shortages, which have led to electricity blackouts and just plain lack of water. I mean, even lack of drinking water. But they blame mismanagement and corruption of the regime for that. But in any case, what I'm saying is that the people of Iran, they're not on board with this. Let this land go up in flames, and let's wipe the Shaitan Kuchek, that's Israel, and the Shaitan Bezork, America, off the face of the map. They're not with that at all. They want what every other people on earth wants, which is opportunities, to live a life with their families in peace. And to have a government representative of themselves, which they do not have right now, that looks out for their best interests, which this regime does not. That's why they're in the streets. Yes, the water, the electricity, but more broadly, if you listen to their cries, and this gets to what I was writing in my new front page article just up today at Front Page Magazine, cries for, what did I say? Cries for liberty. Biden, are you listening? They're not saying, give us water, which they desperately need. Yeah, but that's not what they're chanting in the streets. They're saying, Marg bar dictator, death to the dictator. Marg bar Khamenei, death to Khamenei, down with the regime. That's what they're chanting. And I just think that's it gets to your point, Annie, exactly, of, they are hostages. Those people, which now number what, about 82, 83 million in Iran, they are hostages to that Islamic jihadist regime.
Yes, and another thing, they are chanting and also writing on the walls as no to Islam, no to Sharia, bring back the Shah of Iran.
Mm-hmm.
They are looking for our king, well, technically our prince right now, to go back and take back the power. And yes, people of Iran are not, they don't want to have anything to do with this regime and their nuke or anything they do. Claire, tell our audience where they can go to follow you, support you, and learn more about your book.
Well, I am on social media still. You can find me at Claire M. Lopez on Twitter, on Facebook, at Telegram. I'm there as Lopez Liberty LLC. I could use a few more followers on Telegram. Obviously, at the American Truth Project, where if you text the name, my name, Lopez, Lopez, to the number 88202, you'll get notifications of my my videos and other publications, and then also Citizens Commission on National Security, also at the United West, and certainly, of course, at the Glazoff Gang with Jamie Glazoff, a project of the David Horowitz Freedom Center, and of course, right here with Annie Cyrus and your website as well.
Well, thank you so much. I really encourage everybody to go ahead and follow Claire Lopez's work. She will teach you a lot. And then when you learn that, then pass it to your friends and your family, and anybody who's upset, it's okay. They'll come to love you again when they realize you're telling them the truth. Claire Lopez, thank you so much for giving me your time today, and hopefully we will have you back soon.
Thank you. I'll look forward to it.
Absolutely. Everybody who has stayed with us until now, we appreciate your time and your patience very much. Make sure to share this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and send me your suggested topics for next upcoming videos. Thank you so much, and stay safe, and goodbye.